Welcome to Naptime Sports Talk Podcast. We are two dads talking sports during nap times. Thank you for tuning in to the latest episode. Welcome back to Naptime Sports Talk Podcast. For episode 10, we will start out with the latest news on the Minnesota Wild, Minnesota Timberwolves, and Minnesota Twins. We will then share Vikings and Raiders news. We'll finish up the episode by discussing our top 10 wide receivers and offensive linemen for the NFL draft. Enjoy the show. So Zach, is there anything you'd like to share before we get started, or you just want me to jump right into it?
Yeah, let's just jump right in.
All right, yeah, so the Minnesota Wild. So yeah, as we're recording, the Wild are currently 2 spots back from the second wild card spot at 77 points, and they are 6 points back. They have 11 games left on the season. This week they play Thursday against the Sharks and Saturday against the Golden Knights. Saturday will be a big game since the Golden Knights are occupying that second wild card spot right now. So if they can get a win on the Knights and not go in OT, prevent them from getting any points, that'll help us out a little bit. But still just pushing for that wild card spot. We have an uphill battle continuing on, and we'll see what happens. But yeah, some other related Wild news. So since the last time we spoke, we did unfortunately lose a couple players. We lost Joel Eriksson Ek and Jonas Brodin due to lower body injuries. Ek has been one of our best forwards this season, and Brodin is one of the better defensive D-men in the league.
Sure, yeah.
Which is a big loss for the Wild. So we're hoping we can get Ek back before the season is over. And Brodin, unfortunately, might be done for the year. So we'll see what happens. But also, since we last spoke on the Wild, that the Russian prospect, Marat Kuznetsov, played in his first NHL game. So now he's actually played in 5 total games, and he has registered 1 assist as of now. Overall, he's been really impressive, though. So I can tell he's going to be a solid 2-way player. He's not afraid to throw his body around on the forecheck, and is pretty stout in the defensive zone, too.
Nice. That's awesome. That's cool that he's playing up to his potential. That's sick.
Yeah, so he's still young, and he'll develop, but he hasn't been too bad for his first 5 games in the NHL.
Nice.
On Saturday, I think it was, the Wilds announced that they signed Riley Haight, who's a prospect I mentioned in a previous episode, to an entry-level deal. So, I don't think he'll see NHL action this year, but it's just pretty cool to see some of these top prospects for the Wild get signed.
Yeah, that's awesome. How many games are left? Doesn't the season end like mid-April?
Yeah, so there's 11 games left as of right now.
Okay. So season's almost over already. Wow.
Yeah.
I feel like hockey just started. It's crazy.
Right. It's dwindling down, and, I hope the Wild can make it in the playoffs because it's a lot more entertaining when one of your teams are in there. So
yeah, for sure. And I'm not a massive hockey fan, but watching playoff hockey, I mean, dude, that's insane.
Yeah, those games get intense, and those guys put their bodies on the line, and a lot of them battle through major injuries through the playoffs too. Those hockey players sure are tough, that's for sure.
Dude, it's so much fun to watch.
We'll lean into our next team here, Zach. How are the T-Wolves doing here as of late?
So it's been a little while since we talked about the Timberwolves, but they've won 7 out of their last 10, so they're still, they're still hot. They're still battling in that West. They are now a game and a half back from that number 1 seed. They're currently the 3rd seed behind the Nuggets and the Thunder. But the Timberwolves still have a record of 49-22. They won last night against the Warriors, and it's nice because Naz Reid is still stepping up nicely in place of Towns. Last night he had 20 points and 12 boards, so he's still stepping in nicely. So, the Timberwolves are still right there. So just looking forward here, they have 3 games, the rest of this week. They play the Pistons on Wednesday. They play the Nuggets on Friday, which that's a massive game. So hopefully they can win that one, especially, talking about the West. So that's a massive game. And then they play the Bulls on Sunday. So 2 definitely winnable games, and the game on Friday is huge. And a little Karl Anthony Towns update. He did have surgery on his meniscus. And as of a week ago, he's still going to be out at least a month. But hopefully he'll be back in time for playoffs because, obviously, like I said, Naz Reid has stepped in nicely. but you need a guy
Hmm.
like Towns in the playoffs. So the
For sure.
Timberwolves, it's getting towards the end of the season here, and the Timberwolves are still battling for that number one seed. So it's awesome to see.
If you had to predict right now, do you think they get there, or do you think OKC or Denver is gonna maybe take that number one spot?
Yeah, I mean, if I had to predict, I don't think that they'll end up with the number one seed. If either one, two, or three, which I mean, going into the season, that's super super impressive. I think as of right now, if the season ended today, they would play the Suns in the playoffs. And I
Okay.
said in the previous podcast, I think that's one of the worst matchups for them in the playoffs. So, but the West is so tight. I mean, the Kings are the seventh seed, and they're a game back from the Suns. The the Mavericks are the eighth seed, and they're also a game back from the Suns. So,
Yeah.
with a month or so left in the regular season, I think a lot of these standings will change. But
Yep.
the main thing for the Timberwolves is not even really securing the number one seed. It's more of who you're going to match up it with in the playoffs. And I
Hmm.
definitely wouldn't like to avoid teams like the Suns and the Kings. So hopefully the Timberwolves are able to do that. But overall, man, if you're a Timberwolves fan, a lot of excitement.
Yeah, man, I'm really excited for NBA playoff basketball too, because
It's so
last year
much fun to
there
watch.
it was so entertaining watching the Wolves the past few seasons. So, yeah, I think we have to bring up too, man, that Anthony Edwards dunk.
Yes, against the Jazz on John Collins.
Holy cow, dude!
Yeah,
He like took off from the free throw line and just posterized him big time.
yeah. I'm assuming the majority of the listeners have seen that dunk on Twitter, Sports Center, whatever. But if you haven't, I highly recommend YouTubing it or looking it up because, man, honestly, not even over exaggerating here, that's one of the better dunks I've seen.
No doubt, no doubt.
Yeah, crazy, but baseball's here, man. Baseball starts up the regular season starts up here on Thursday. What's going on with the Minnesota Twins?
Yeah, so just like you said, the Twins are wrapping up spring training here this week, and they'll actually play their first game on March 28th versus the Kansas City Royals. That'll be an away game. And then they'll come back to Minnesota to have their home opener on April 4th versus the Cleveland Guardians. So they did come out and state on Monday, March 18th, that our flamethrower closer Johan Duran will start the season on the 15-day injured list, unfortunately, with an oblique strain. So
That's a huge
hopefully we'll
loss.
get him back by mid-April. But yeah, I'm overall very, very excited for this season. And, as of right now, I would expect the Twins to repeat as AL Central Division champs. So
Yep.
we did also unfortunately lose that pitcher that we got back in return for Jorge Polanco from the Seattle Mariners. We're expecting him to kind of be maybe not I don't know, he wouldn't be like a third or fourth guy, but maybe like a rotational fifth guy, and that's that I can't say his last name, but it's like Desclafani or something like that.
Sure. Yep.
I think he's heading to Tommy John surgery, unfortunately. So
Jeez.
we'll see what happens with their pitching.
Yeah, there's so many injuries to start off this baseball season around the league. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, just talking quick, you're a big baseball guy too, and your team, the Padres, was playing over there in, was it South Korea here the last week?
Yep. South Korea, 2 games over there. Yep.
Okay. What did they win 1-1?
Yeah, 1-1, and actually they played the Dodgers really well. They should have won that first game, but kind of had a collapse there in the eighth inning.
Okay.
But yeah, they played the Dodgers really tight. So I'm excited to see what the Padres can do this year. I think they're gonna kind of surprise a lot of people. I know a lot of people are picking them to be third or fourth in the NL West. So we'll see what they can do. But I really like their roster this year. So yeah, I'm excited.
And then they have that stud center fielder, Jackson
Jacks,
Merrill. How has he been
yes.
doing?
He looked really well. In his last game against the Dodgers, he went 3 for 4. So overall
Okay.
had a really nice series. He's only 20 years old. I'm super, super excited that they called him up and they're starting him because their outfield depth was pretty thin. So dude, I'm excited. Having him and Tatis, for the full season this year, and obviously Manny Machado hit a bomb in their second game against the Dodgers. So yeah, man. For me, expectations are pretty high. But just going back to the Twins real quick, I had a fantasy baseball draft here a couple days ago, and
Okay.
Royce Lewis was a top 10 pick. So
Wow.
yeah, I was really surprised by that. But expectations for Minnesota Twins fans, are pretty high with Royce Lewis hopefully being healthy for this entire season.
Yeah, if he can stay healthy, I think I don't know who it was, but some source out there was doing their predictions for the stats, and they had him at I think around 30 home runs, if not a little over. So yeah, Royce Lewis is a very exciting player for the Twins, and hopefully, like you said, he'll stay healthy, and hopefully Buxton can put together a healthy year this year as well.
Yeah, and he's back in the field this year, isn't he? He's playing center again.
Yep, he had a couple highlights here the past couple weeks. He had a nice diving catch in center field,
Okay,
and
nice.
I think he's trying to not be as aggressive, kind of being a little smarter with how he's going approaching some of these catches. So hopefully that'll help him a little bit staying healthy.
Yeah, for sure. And that's one thing about Buxton. I mean, obviously you want to keep him healthy, and they DH'd him last year, but having a guy
Mm-hmm.
like him in the outfield, that talent, that speed that he has, I mean, he's arguably one of the better, center fielders in the entire league. So you got to have him play the field. So that's awesome that
Yeah,
he's
no
back out
doubt.
there.
Yeah, he's very electrifying out there in the field. So you got to have him, like you said.
Yeah, dude, I love the Twins roster though this year. I'm going to be watching a lot of Twins games. Yeah, I think they're going to surprise a lot of people with their overall record, and I definitely think that they're going to win that division again.
Well, moving on to our next topic. So we're just going to talk a little bit about the Vikings and Raiders news. So Zach, why don't you get started first? What's the latest Raider news here over the past few weeks since we last spoke?
Yeah, so the Raiders are still really quiet. I'm actually really surprised. I thought they were going to be really aggressive. We still have plenty of money to go out and get guys. The only thing
Mm-hmm.
we've really done since the last time we talked is they went out and re-signed defensive tackle John Jenkins, which was a nice piece because now, we re-signed Adam Butler, which he had 5 sacks last year. So that was huge for us. He was their best defensive tackle. And then we went and got Christian Wilkins. Right? We talked about that a million times now, but grand slam pick up there. And then having John Jenkins, another defensive tackle, 6'3", 330 pounds. He had 3.5 sacks last year. So, I'm really liking what the Raiders are doing with their defensive line. But overall, man, the Raiders are being really, really quiet. And I don't know I don't know if they got a trade brewing. I've heard rumors of them potentially trading for number one corner, like I've said, but yeah, overall,
Mm-hmm.
the last 2 weeks since pretty much that Christian Wilkins and Gardner Minshew signing, they've been quiet.
You must be pretty happy with that L'Jarius Sneed trade over to Tennessee.
Dude, absolutely. And Tennessee only traded a 3 and a 7 for him, so I thought they
Yeah.
were going to get a lot more than that. And then I saw a lot of things on Twitter that they were actually going to try to keep him and just let him play on the franchise tag this year, which I
Yeah.
definitely did want to see. So the fact that he's staying in the AFC, which is fine, but he's out of the division. So last year he was one of the best corners in the NFL. So I'm very, very happy that he's out the Chiefs.
Yeah, what a cool team too, Tennessee Titans down in Nashville. If you have never been to Nashville before, I highly recommend to go and check it out. You will not be disappointed.
Yeah, I've never been that, but that's one place I definitely want to go to soon. It'd be so cool to go see a Titans game out there.
Yeah, for sure. Hope maybe in the future the Raiders will play out there, or the Vikes will play there, and you can make a trip down there or something for a short weekend.
Oh, dude, I would love that. But yeah, those guys, I mean, they've got tons of new talent in Tennessee. They're really,
Yeah.
helping, Will Levis, and I think their defense should be top 15, possibly top 10. So Tennessee Titans might be surprising a lot of people next season.
Yeah, definitely. I wonder if, picking at number 7 there, if they're going to be pretty much a lock for an offensive tackle. Like you said, they went out and signed Calvin Ridley to big money. Do they maybe bring him in there? Or maybe even, I don't know who their tight end is off the top of my head right now, but maybe a guy like Brock Bowers could go there and just help add it or give Will Levis another weapon there in Tennessee.
Yeah, I would not. That would not surprise me one bit. I mean, even if they went receiver there, they could. I think they still could go receiver. Like you said, they definitely
Yeah.
got Kelvin Ridley and stuff. But man, could you imagine if they went out there and got a home of Doomsday next to D Hop and
Yeah.
Kelvin Ridley? I mean, man, talk about really helping that the rookie quarterback from last year. That'd be nuts.
Speaking on D Hop, last year when we went to the Vikings joint practices with Tennessee. Man, what a great dude. He stayed there and signed autographs for all those people. We got to give him like a little fist bump and stuff like that. He's a really stand-up guy, so that was really cool. I'm a fan of Tennessee. I'll root for them. So yeah,
Yeah,
we'll see what they can do this next season here.
yeah. Him and Derrick Henry both. It was cool that it was obviously in Minnesota. The fact that they stayed back after practice and signed autographs for hundreds of Vikings fans. It was awesome to see, especially two guys like that. They paid their dues in the
Yeah.
NFL, so you can tell that
Yep.
both those guys are stand-up guys. And speaking on DeAndre Hopkins, he still had over 1,000 yards last year, so he's still a dominant receiver out there on the outside.
No doubt. No doubt. Moving to the Vikings. So the Vikings, man, they continue to be busy.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
they're they've been signing a lot of kind of depth players right now, which is good. We need more depth to our roster, which is what we have been lacking over the last number of years with, Kirk to that big contract. So now freeing up Kirk, that money for Kirk, now we can kind of go out there and sign some more players, which has been really exciting. So they brought in a defensive lineman, Jonah Williams, not the offensive tackle who signed down in Arizona. But Jonah Williams, I think he was on the practice squad at one point with the Vikings. We brought him over from the LA Rams. So he'll be joining the team as kind of a depth defensive lineman. And then we also signed a couple more depth guys. Defense lineman Jihad Ward, who was a former Raiders draft pick. I think he was like a second round pick
Yep.
for the Raiders at one point.
Yeah, and actually, he's not a bad player. He's got good
Okay.
size. He's 6'5", I think 290 or close to 300 pounds. He's
Yeah.
definitely a rotational guy, but
Yep.
overall, I mean, he yeah, he's good. I think he had 5 or 6 sacks last year, so
Yeah, I
definitely a
believe.
guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like an interior pass rusher, especially, him being a rotational player, that's a very underrated signing.
Yeah, I think he had one of his better seasons coming off this past season out in New York for the Giants. So,
Yeah,
like you said, a good rotational piece that I think he'll have a good shot at making the roster.
definitely.
But then they went out and signed linebacker Camus Gruger Hill. He's going to be probably more a depth guy. See, he'll make it out of camp on the 53 roster or 53 man roster. And then a nice signing that I liked, and that was bringing in Shaq Griffin, cornerback. So he's kind of struggled the last few years, but maybe Flores could try to unlock something there. And I think he's 29 years old right now, but definitely a guy that can come in and start for us when called upon and could rotate in as well and kind of add insurance just in case a guy like Booth Jr. maybe doesn't pan out, or the guy that out of CU there from who had the concussion problems. So we'll have to look him up because I'm blanking on his name right now. But yeah, as I looked that up, Zach, the Raiders came out and signed former running back Alexander Madison. How are you feeling about that?
Oh yeah, yeah, that is very true. I almost forgot about that signing. He's definitely a depth guy. He's only 25 years old, and he definitely fits what the Raiders want to do. They're north and south, want to punch you in the mouth kind of running style. So I think that'll be good for him. But
Mm-hmm.
overall, I mean, you look at his last 3 seasons in Minnesota. I thought he underperformed all 3 years. He hasn't had a 4 average since 2020, the COVID year. So no rushing touchdowns last year in a season where he should have been their number one running back. I thought that he was going to kind of take over and be that guy for him, and he just wasn't. So I think in a couple, like maybe 2 or 3 episodes ago, we discussed if he was going to be on the Vikings next year, and both of us said that we didn't think that he would be. So the fact that
Yeah.
they cut him, the Vikings or the Raiders picked him up, well, I still think there's potential of him not making the team. So we'll see what happens, but a move that doesn't really move the needle for me, that's for sure.
Yeah, and he was better served as a number two back, not a
Absolutely.
starter. So he did come in and have a couple nice games when called upon to start for Dalvin Cook in past years.
Yeah.
Like you said, they rely on him for the whole season as the guy. Obviously, we saw how that worked out this year. So, but
Yeah.
yeah, going back to the cornerback, Caleb Evans, that's who I meant. So he definitely is a guy that kind of, you know, had some decent play, but last year, man, I thought he kind of fell off towards the end of the year. So I think Griffin will be a nice insurance policy to those guys and can come in and start.
Yeah, and if anyone can, tap into that a Shaq Griffin potential, he was a Pro Bowler for the Seahawks. So, maybe he can flash a little bit for Flores. So we'll see what happens there, but that's a nice pickup, just adding depth to that quarterback room is huge.
Yeah, we need all the depth as possible there. the defensive side of the ball. So, a few. I'd still like to see what they're gonna do at left guard. Dalton Reisner's still out there. I don't know if we're bringing him back or what, or maybe we're waiting to see what we can do in the draft first, and then see if we can
Yeah.
address that need maybe after. So definitely the free agency signings have kind of slowed down a little bit over here or over the past week or so, just across the NFL in general. So, right now I
Yep.
know they're having the owner meetings down in Florida. Maybe after this week or this coming after those meetings, we'll see some more moves take place. Maybe another like a third wave of free agency or something.
Yeah, and I think you hit it on the head too. I think we'll see a couple more guys get signed, but I think a lot of these guys that are still sitting out there, there's still a decent amount of corners and guards and stuff.
Yeah.
I think a lot of these guys will have to wait until after the draft to find new homes. So
So speaking on the owner meetings, did you see the ban that they did today?
yes, the hip tackle, or what do they call it? Hip tackle?
Yeah, like the hip drop tackle.
Hit drop tackle. Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm not a fan of it at all. I think, even going back and watching a football game 20 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
like 2004, I mean, the game has changed so much. It's not even like the same, doesn't even look like the same sport.
Yeah.
I mean, with the hits and all that stuff, it looks completely different. I uh I feel now this a lot of people might not agree with this, but I don't really know how NFL players can now tackle from behind. Say if a guy, is breaking loose and you're chasing the guy down,
Yeah.
the only way you can legally tackle him now is kind of trip him up at his ankles because you can't do the hip drop.
Mm-hmm.
So I understand, there's a lot of injuries that go along with the hip drop, but these athletes are paid tons and tons of money. They know what they've signed up for. Injuries are a part of the game, concussions are a part of the game. So, these players know that, but and I understand player safety to an extent,
Yeah.
but when it comes to, I don't think we're too far off to realistically putting, flags on these guys. You can't even hit the quarterbacks now. You can't tackle from behind. You can't hit high. Running backs can't lower their head, to break tackles. It's
Mm-hmm.
just like, I mean, this is barely football now. So that when I saw that today, it definitely ticks me off because it seems like every off season, the game is changing more and more and we're getting closer and closer to players wearing flags, and yeah, just doesn't sit right with me at all. What do you think about it?
Yeah, I think you just spoke to it in great detail there and hit it right on the head. And like you said, it just kind of takes the physicality a little more down. I guess it's still a pretty physical game, but like you said, there's just so many protections set out to protect these players, which I agree, head protection. Obviously, you don't want concussion and brain issues later on in life. But, we
Absolutely.
saw last year how TJ Hawkinson took that shot low in the knee, and the NFL kind of promotes those low shots like that. They'd rather have these guys get a knee taken out than have concussion issues. But yeah, the hip drop tackle just, it's a play that has been around for a very long time. And I think Harrison Smith utilizes this tackle quite a bit. So we'll
Yeah,
see
yeah,
what can happen, but definitely going to be a challenging switch for the defensive players. And man, every year they just kind of make it more harder and harder to be a defensive player in the NFL.
yeah, absolutely. And you look at Twitter and or X, and you see all these players complaining about it. I mean, you said it perfectly. How are these guys? It defense is so difficult as is. It's so hard to stop these amazing receivers and quarterbacks. But now you have to, when you go and make a tackle, you have to think about it. You can't just go out there
Mm-hmm.
and play football. You have to think about how you're going to hit these guys.
Yeah.
Guys coming across the middle, you can't hit them high. So you got to hit them low, and now they're tearing, guys' knees up.
Mm-hmm.
And the fans get pissed, but it's like, that's what the NFL wants.
Yep.
So it's frustrating to watch. It's frustrating to see these rules change year after year, and you know, hopefully, I know Roger Goodell is a huge part in player safety and all these rule changes. And I think this is going to be his last contract with the NFL. So maybe things change in the future. But,
Mm-hmm.
once these rules have been changed, it's really hard to, go back to old school football. I don't think a lot of people would be down for that. So, our game has changed forever. And I think it's changed for the worst, unfortunately.
Yeah. Hopefully it can, not change for the worse. But like you said, every year they take something out that's just a part of football. So we'll see what
Yeah,
happens.
absolutely.
But moving into our
Nope.
next topic, the NFL draft. So today we're going to be going over our top 10 wide receivers and our top 10 offense linemen. Before we start those, Zach, did you see the news how Tom Pelissero came out and said, based on sources down there in the owner meetings, Washington might be leaning more J.J. McCarthy at number 2. I don't know if it's smoke, because we see a lot of smoke around this time. Usually I feel like we see more smoke the first or the last couple of weeks leading up to the NFL draft there in April. But man, I was pretty surprised by that. And if the Vikes can somehow get up to 3 or 4 and they have a hand pick between Drake May and Jaden Daniels, I'll be pretty happy about that.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought this up because I wanted to talk about this today. I saw the same thing, and I'm assuming that it's smoke, but what if it's not? You know, what all this there's always a quarterback that rises in every draft. And I don't know if I remember a quarterback rising as much, since the season ended. Like we talked about a million times, we all thought that JJ shouldn't have been a first round quarterback. And now people are talking about him going 2
Right.
over Drake May and Jaden Daniels. So that's super surprising. If I had to guess, it's probably smoke. I mean, if you just look at the quarterbacks that Cliff Kingsbury has coached, Jaden Daniels fits that mold perfectly. But if it's not smoke and it is true, I mean, you're looking at a team like the Vikings and the Raiders. I know the Raiders really love Jaden Daniels with the ties with Antonio Pierce. I mean, I feel like they would be super, super aggressive trying to get up to that third pick. And I think the Vikings would be, just as aggressive too. And if the Vikings did trade up to that third pick, they traded, just say 3 1s to trade with New England,
Mm-hmm.
and Jaden Daniels and Drake May are both on the board. Who would you want?
Man, that's a great question.
It's tough.
So as we have rated our quarterbacks in the past, I've stuck with Drake May at number 2 and Jaden Daniels at
Yep.
number 3. The one thing I do like, obviously I think both prospects or both quarterback prospects are very talented. They're very
Yep.
different in their own rights. Jaden Daniels has more, I would say, elite speed than Drake May. Not saying Drake May is not athletic, because he certainly is athletic. But man, I would probably go Drake May because he may be one of the better quarterbacks in this draft who can throw in the middle of the field. And I know KOC in this offense, he loves his crossing routes. So that really kind of stands out to me. And just age
Sure.
thing too. He's still pretty young. He's gonna have that familiarity or whatever to having Josh McCown there in the building. And if we needed to, we could let him sit for however long it takes until he's ready. But yeah, I think I'll lean on Drake May myself.
And I think that's what they would do. From everything that I've seen, and it just seems like that's their quarterback too. That's the guy that they want to trade up and get.
Mm-hmm.
And even if Jaden Daniels was still on the clock, there's LSU ties with him and Justin
Yep.
Jefferson. I still think at the end of the day, I think the Vikings would take Drake May at 3 over Jaden Daniels. And I got Jaden Daniels as my quarterback too. But I mean, either way, Vikings fans should be ecstatic if they can go out there and get Drake May.
So you would take, if it was flipped here and you were the GM, you'd take Daniels at 3.
Yeah, yep. I would take Daniels. I think him and Caleb are a tier of their own.
Mm-hmm.
I think, just Jaden Daniels throwing. I think he's a little more polished thrower than Drake May is.
Yeah.
That not many. I don't think a lot of people would agree with that, but I just think he's a little more polished. And then you add that, potential 4.3 speed. I just think he's a little more dynamic. But his frame is scary to a lot of teams. He only weighs 205 pounds, and he takes a ton of hits. He hasn't had injury concerns, but at the next level, you're only 205 pounds, and there's linebackers and safety that will light you up, any chance to any chance they have to hitting a quarterback. So
Mm-hmm.
there is a little injury concern with Jaden Daniels. So I do think that the Vikings would, I just think Drake May's the best fit for the Vikings in this entire
Yeah, I
draft.
think he fits our offense perfectly. So he'd be my number one
Yeah.
guy who I would want for the Vikes. Obviously, if Caleb Williams was there, which he won't be, we have seen crazier things in the draft, but so until that card's actually sent in, But man, I just think he's a lock there in Chicago. But we'll see what happens
Yep.
because on Twitter, some people have been coming out too and saying that it's going to be Drake May and not Jaden Daniels because we've talked about it being Jaden Daniels there in Washington too, and now today JJ. There's a lot of rumors floating around there, and we'll know here in the next
Yep.
31 days, I think, from right now, Zach, until the NFL draft. So I'm really pumped up to see all of these questions be answered.
Yeah, and this is the biggest draft for the Vikings in, at least a decade plus. This is massive for them. They can't wait on a quarterback next year because they don't have the ammunition. With having 2 first-round picks this year, I think that they have to leave that first round with the quarterback. So I'm really curious to see how aggressive they are and who they end up with. But man, we're gonna find out in around a month, and this is a huge one for the Minnesota Vikings.
I agree for sure. It's a monumental decision here for our franchise.
It really is. Absolutely, dude. I can't wait to see it.
Well, moving into the next topic. So, should we start off with the offensive line first, or do you want to go wide receivers?
We can start with the offensive line.
All right, yeah. So we'll kind of just do what we've been doing over the past few times. We'll just go one on one, and then you share one, I share one, and then so on.
Yeah, that sounds good. You want to go
Sure,
first?
yeah. So my number one offense lineman is offense tackle in Notre Dame. That's Joe Alt. He's also a Minnesota boy too, so that's really cool. He's a very physical offensive tackle, mammoth of a man, and I think he will be a future All-Pro left tackle in the NFL.
Yeah, I like that one. I just want to say real quick, majority of scouts think that this is the best offensive line draft in 20 plus years. So this is a historic draft class for offensive linemen. And, we're going to hit on the receivers here in a couple minutes, but I think this is the best receiving draft that I've ever
Yeah.
seen. So if your team needs a receiver or an offensive lineman, you're in luck because this draft class is stacked and loaded at both those positions. But just hitting on my number one offensive lineman in this draft, it is J.C. Latham,
Okay.
right tackle out of Alabama. One of my favorite players in the entire draft. 6'6", 350 pounds, so he's massive. And he's just an old school football player. Plays with a ton of power. Just a nasty, nasty football player. And I think as a rookie, this is bold now, but as a rookie, I think he's a top 5 right tackle in the entire NFL.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's elite against the run. I think he's elite against the pass. He was a 5-star recruit coming out of high school, so he's always been that dude. And his entire time in college, he's never allowed a sack. So an absolute superstar right tackle. And I would love to see him in Vegas. But yeah, my number one, JC Latham.
No doubt. Yeah, he is a special talent, that is for sure. So my number two guy is Talise Fuanga, and I have learned this pronunciation, and it looks like it's Fuaga, but his last name's actually Fuanga, which is different.
Fuanga. Okay, I didn't know
Yeah.
that. So that's good to know.
So
Okay, cool.
offensive tackle at Oregon State, very powerful. Once he gets his hands on you, good luck. That's my note on him. So he is going to be, I think, just another one of those plug and play starters here in the NFL. And like you said, if you need offensive tackle, man, you're sure in luck. So Zach, I know in previous mocks, I think we've had Fuanga go to the Raiders at 13. Do you think offensive tackle is one of the bigger needs, or if Michael Penix is sitting there at 13, do the Raiders take him now with the talk about how all these quarterbacks are rising up the draft boards?
Yeah, so I would love Penix at 13. I really would, but I still don't think that they do that. I think if they want him, it's still a trade back in
Okay.
type of situation. But talking on Fuaga, that's how you pronounce it, correct?
Fuanga.
Fuanga. So if they took Fuanga there at 13, I think right tackle is the biggest need on this football team. Besides, corners there too. But I do think we don't have anyone to play right tackle right now. So you get a guy like him would be absolutely massive. So I would not be surprised if they end up going right tackle at 13.
Okay.
But going with my number 2 here, and you already talked about it, but it's Joe Alt from Notre Dame. 6'8", 320 pounds. He's been playing since a freshman, back-to-back seasons as a first-team All-American. Like you said, he's a Minnesota boy, which makes him that much cooler. And his dad is a former first-round pick. He played his entire career with the Kansas City Chiefs. His name was John Alt, and he's actually in the Chiefs Hall of Fame. So you got some good bloodlines there too. So yeah, Joe Alt, I think is going to be a guy that the Tennessee Titans look at 7, and an absolute superstar left
No
tackle.
doubt. My number third guy, you already talked about him. He's your number one, and that is J.C. Latham, offensive tackle at Alabama. Like you hit it right on the head about him, but just some notes I have from my viewing, from what I've seen him from Alabama, and that is he's an absolute beast. Might be the most
Yep.
physical player in this offensive line class. But I definitely think,
Yeah.
there's a lot of very physical guys, but I think he's definitely that number one guy that is just an absolute finisher.
Yeah, he's such an old school football player. I like him a lot. But going to my number 3 here is Alua from Penn State, 6'6", 320 pounds, absolute dominant pass blocker.
Mhm.
Might honestly could be the best pass blocker in this entire draft, but he does struggle in the run game. Very athletic for his size, being 6'6", 320 pounds. And he won the offensive lineman award for college this past season. So, and was an All-American. So I think last year, if he would have he would have been a top 10 pick.
Yep.
I feel like this year he kind of played down a little bit, so he could potentially still be a top 10 pick. Maybe he goes to the Jets at 10, but he's probably going to fall outside the top 10, but still just an absolute you get a guy like him, and I don't think you're gonna have to worry about either, your left tackle. You could play him at right tackle too, but I think he's a left tackle at the next level. And I don't think you're gonna have to worry about left tackle for the next decade with a guy like that. So Fashionua is my third best offensive lineman in this
Well, that's
draft.
perfect because he's my number 4 guy. So,
Nice.
just some things I have on him is he shows natural athleticism, both pass protection and run blocking, something I really like. Last year, I said this too, last year he could have been a top pick. Now I think he might slide out of that top 10 with some of these other guys rising. So, I definitely think he'll go probably in the top 20 of this draft, but we'll see what happens. And one more little note, I don't know if you've noticed this or seen this, but I guess his hands are pretty small. His hands were measured at 8.5 inches, which is pretty small
Holy,
for
that's
an
small.
offensive
For a
tackle.
guy at 6'6". Holy crap.
Oh, that's perfect.
Jesus,
That's perfect.
that's dude, that's
Yeah, so
crazy. That's so small, dude.
that's something
Holy.
that's a little concerning to me because, most time those guys have those massive hands and, is he going to be able to lock on to these other dudes that have, you know, bigger or not big
Yeah.
hands, but we'll see if he can lock on with them. And, he has shown that in college. So maybe he can just overcome they'll overcome that size with his natural athleticism. And yeah, we'll see what happens with him. But yeah, just a little note that I had here and just wanted to see your reaction to it.
Dude, that's crazy. I did not know that. And a little advice for him is I would not be shaking hands with any GMs or else he's gonna be a day 2 pick. So he should keep his hands in his pockets, man. That's really concerning. But yeah, yeah. He's still my number 3. I'll keep him up there. But I'm gonna put small hands in my notes. But moving on to number 4, Talise Fouet. Say that last name for me one more time.
So it's Talise Fuanga.
Talise Fuanga. Okay. Out of Oregon State. He's my number 4. I love his size. 6'6", 335. He's another old school football player. Bullies guys at the line of scrimmage. He's a really fun guy to watch, just YouTube highlights and how he just dominates guys. I think he's the best run blocker in this entire draft. It's between him and J.C. Latham.
Mhm.
And you could argue that Talise is number 1. This is another guy that's never allowed a college sack. So, I mean, you get a guy like him at 13 potentially with the Raiders. With him and Colton Miller, dude, you got your 2 bookend tackles for the next for a long time. So I would love that pick at 13. And in most drafts, he's probably the best lineman in the draft, but because it's so deep, he is my number 4, but an absolute superstar.
No doubt. As we have said before, we have to get one of these in there, and that is an absolute dog.
Absolute, and he is an absolute dog. It's a good way to describe him for sure.
Well, yeah, so moving on to my number 5 player, and this is going to be our first non-offensive tackle player, and that's Jackson Powers Johnson, offensive center out of Oregon.
I love it. He's my number 5 too.
Yeah, so what he showed me at the Senior Bowl just really impressed me overall. His power, and how he locked down those big defensive tackles with ease is something I really like from him. So, yeah, I think he's definitely a guy that earned him some money in this draft process. Maybe someone who was thought more of a day two guy that's now rising up in the day one consideration. And I'd probably say anywhere from maybe 15 to 32 is a good range for him.
Absolutely. He's my number 5 guy too. Like I said, he was an All-American this last season. He won the Remington Trophy, which is given to the best center in college football. He's just dominant against the run and dominant against the
For
pass.
sure.
And for being 320 pounds, I mean, he can get out and on pull blocks and screens with ease. I think he's a plug and play center right away, and that's a position you don't have to worry about for a very long time. I don't know, this guy might be the safest pick in the entire draft because I have no idea how this dude could turn out to be a
No
bust.
doubt.
He's just going to be an absolute superstar. And, looking at that first round, if he's still on the clock, the Eagles at 22, they don't have a bunch of needs, and Kelsey just retired. I think that would be a hell of a pick for him. At 22, they could just plug him in and not even worry about it. So, love that
For
player.
sure. So moving on to my sixth player, that is Troy Fontanu out of Washington. So offensive tackle, or I think actually the offensive guard I meant, or no, he's offensive tackle. I think he could move in and
Yep.
play guard. So, one thing I have, he has great athleticism and power. I wonder if, yeah, like I said, I wonder if he might move on inside to the guard at the next, or to guard at the next level. I think he'll be a great player no matter where he plays. And one thing I always notice about him when he does play, he always has his gut hanging out in a crop top. I think that's kind
Yeah.
of a little goofy.
Yeah, he's in my top 10. I like him a lot too, but that is a guy that can play left tackle or guard, so that's definitely nice having that versatility. But my number 6 is Amirius Mims from Georgia. Now you look at this guy, and he is a massive human, 6'8", 340 pounds. He's got a 7'2" wingspan. He was a 5-star recruit coming out of high school. So the only knock on him is he doesn't have a huge sample size. He only played a few games in
Mhm.
2022, but he was dominant, and then he was dominant last year before having surgery on his leg. So like I said, small sample size compared to top guys in this draft, and that's why I have him at number 6. But in most drafts, I mean, he's probably a top 15 player and a guy that I still think will be a first round pick in this draft.
No doubt. And he's actually leading into my seventh guy. He's actually number 7 on my board. So yeah, I put in here, like we like to say, an
Absolute
absolute
dog.
dog. So I really like his size and how he's handled himself playing versus top talent in the SEC too. So man, he is a big boy
Yeah,
as
he
well.
definitely is. But leading into my number 7 here is that Troy Patanu from Washington, the guy that you just mentioned, 6'4", 315. He's already 24 years old, but when it comes to offensive lineman, I mean, that doesn't matter at all. He played left
Mhm.
tackle, also played some guard, like we just discussed. He's played over 1,700 snaps the past 2 seasons and only allowed 2 sacks. So just
Yeah.
really good against the run, really good against the run and pass. Um, so yeah, I mean, this I'm gonna be saying this for all these guys, but in most drafts, these are top 15 guys. But because it's such a deep class, these guys are gonna fall a little bit. But he's an absolute beast too.
No doubt. Well, moving into my number 8 guy, that's Tyler Guyton, offensive tackle at Oklahoma. So I believe he moved from tight end over to offensive tackle, but he's still learning the position and is very raw. But man, he has a size that you look for and an athleticism too for offensive tackle. So I think he could use a little further development, but his upside is something that I think is going to make him potentially a first or late first round pick to early day
Yep,
two.
and he's my number 8. He's my number 8 too. 6'7", 330
Okay.
pounds. Started his college career at TCU and then transferred to Oklahoma and played right tackle for him. But like you said, his athleticism and size, really light on his feet. He's not as good as a run blocker as you'd want or hope for in a right tackle. He plays high, that's sometimes leading him to get pushed back to the quarterback's lap. But with a guy that's six
Mhm.
seven, being able to move like that, light on his feet, he's definitely a nice project to have. And I think he'll be a day one starter for whoever team takes him.
Yeah, for sure. So moving on to my number 9 guy, and that's Graham Barton, offensive tackle to Duke. So yeah, I think this is a guy that's kind of rising up here in the process. He has really good size, 6'5", 314, and he could potentially slide into the late first round. So we'll see what happens, but keep an eye on Graham Barton out
Yeah,
of Duke.
yep, I like it. My number 9 is Cooper Beebe from Kansas State, 6'4", 335. In my opinion, he's the best guard in this draft. Back-to-back Big 12 Offensive Lineman of the Year and an All-American this past season. The last 3 years, he's been a starter and he's never allowed a sack, so that's huge at guard. Watching his games, I don't see any weakness. He does have shorter arms, but it doesn't affect his play at all. So if you need a guard, he's definitely that dude. But Cooper Beebe, number 9 from Kansas State, love that player.
Yeah, he's gonna be a very solid player too. He didn't make my top 10, but he was very close to coming in here
Sure,
at number 10. So my number 10 guy is Zach Frazier, offensive center out of West Virginia. Another very physical center who will make an immediate impact anchoring in O-line. So he's a really stout run blocker and pass blocker too. So I think he'll probably go somewhere on day 2 in the second round. He has a wrestling background, which is something I like out of offensive
definitely.
linemen. So he's pretty physical,
Yep.
like I said. But yeah, Zach Frazier, offensive center out of West
Yeah, I,
Virginia.
I like that one. But my number 10 is Patrick Paul, tackle from Houston. Now, this dude is huge. He's 6'8", 330 pounds, and has a ton of college experience, which I really like, and that's why he's in my top 10. He's played almost 3,000 career
Mm-hmm.
snaps, and he's definitely more of a project, but with his size, long arms, and good pass blocking ability, I think if a team is somewhat patient with him, I think that he's got elite tools that can make him eventually an elite player. And don't be surprised if he finds himself in the late first round. I've seen a couple mocks with it, which I do like, but
Okay.
I think that college experience of playing almost 3,000 career snaps is going to go a long ways when it comes to, where he gets selected. So, yeah, definitely a name to keep an eye on is Patrick Paul out of Houston.
Well, just kind of recapping our top 10. So my number 1 guy is Joe Alt. Number 2, Talise Fuanga. Number 3, JC Latham. Number 4, Fashanu. Number 5, Jackson Powers Johnson. Number 6, Troy Fontanu. Number 7, Amarius Mims. Number 8, Tyler Guyton. Number 9, Graham Barton. And number 10, Zach Frazier.
My top 10. Number 1, JC Latham. Number 2, Joe Alt. Number 3, Fashion Out. Number 3, Talise Fuanga. Number 5, Jackson Powers Johnson. Number 6, Amarius Mims. Number 7, Troy Fontanao. 8, Tyler Guyton. 9, Cooper Beebe. And 10, Patrick Paul.
All
Absolute.
absolute
Oh,
dogs.
good year for offensive alignment.
No doubt, no doubt. All right, yeah, so that wraps up our offensive line rankings. So next we're going to be going into the wide receiver rankings. So Zach, my number 1 guy, I think he's pretty much the consensus. I'm imagining that you're going to have him at number 1 too, and that is Marvin Harrison Jr. out of Ohio State. So one of the best wide receiver prospects I have ever seen.
Yeah.
He has all the tools to be a big-time NFL wide receiver. He's my second overall rated prospect behind Caleb Williams in this draft. I
Yeah.
have Caleb Williams at number 1 and Marvin Harrison Jr. at number 2. But yeah, man, I am excited to see him at the next level and to see if he can continue to progress and become even better.
Yeah, and the thing about him is I don't think many people they're kind of not talking about him as much as I thought because with these quarterbacks, a lot of everyone's talking about the quarterbacks, the linemen, and kind of forgetting about Marvin Harrison Jr. But he's my number 2 prospect in this entire draft behind Caleb. Also, I mean 6'3", 210 ran. I think he's a 4.3. He hasn't ran this 40. He hasn't really done anything this offseason, but that's a
Mm-hmm.
guy that really doesn't need to. I think that he's a 4.3 guy. Played mostly outside in 2022, but last year played a lot in the slot. So he's got the versatility to play inside and outside. I think he's the best one-on-one receiver in this draft. Those 50-50 balls are more like 80-20 balls. His body
Mm-hmm.
control is insane. And I have player comps for all 10 of my receivers. And his comp to me is Julio Jones. I mean, it's kind of scary how similar those two players are. But yeah, he's superstar receiver. He's going to fall to either 4 or 5 if I had to guess. And getting a guy like that at 4 or 5, I mean, freaking home run, man. Love Marvin Harrison Jr.
No doubt. My number 2 guy is Malik Neighbors out of LSU. So he is no consolation prize to Marvin Harrison Jr.
Yep.
He is an athletic, physical receiver. I can't wait to see him at the next level. He'll be a number 1 on a team from the get-go. So whoever gets him, like I said, is not getting no consolation prize because he is elite.
Yep, and he definitely is. 6 foot, 200 pounds, plays a lot bigger than that. Watching him, watching his game, watching his highlights, you would never assume that he's only 6 foot. Um, I think he's the best player in this entire draft with the ball in his hands. I mean, you can, throw little screens to him, quick slants, and, the potential of him taking it to the house are pretty high. So, and he's still only 20 years old, so a player that, one of the younger players in the entire draft. My player comparison for him is Antonio Brown. So
Okay.
definitely wide receiver 1 in most drafts, but because Marvin's so special, wide receiver 2 for sure.
Yeah, very very nice very nice comp for him as well. Number 3 is Rome Odunze out of Washington. So big body receiver at 6'3", 212. Went off this past season for 87 receptions, 1,553 receiving yards, and 13 touchdowns. He was Penix's favorite deep ball target this past year. I think he's also going to be an absolute dog at the next level.
Absolute dog. And I agree. He's my number 3 too. 6'3", 215 pounds. He ran that 4.45, which is plenty fast for him. Elite deep ball tracker. He's got that late hands on those deep balls, which is huge in the NFL. A guy like Devonta Adams does that, to a T. Definitely a guy that he models his game after, he says. Had 92 catches, 1,600 yards, 13 touchdowns. And he's I think his best thing about him is the most elite trait is him being able to sit in zone coverage and find the openings. He's very, very good at it. He's like a seasoned vet in the NFL when it comes to exposing zone defenses. So a guy that's going to be able to move the chains at the next level. And my comparison for him, now these comparisons are they going to be these guys? Probably not, because a lot of my comparisons are, Hall of Fame type guys. But I do think that these guys have the potential to be these guys. And my NFL comparison for Rome Odunze is Larry Fitzgerald. I think they play a lot alike.
He also reminds me of a little bit?
Who's that?
Keenan Allen.
Yeah, I could see that too. Definitely. Especially the way he runs routes. And, Keenan Allen's a guy that is definitely a third down target because, he just able to get open in those zone coverages. So I really like that comparison.
Yeah, we'll see if they can team up here in Chicago, if that's the route they may be going. See if he even gets to number 9 when they're picking.
God, I would love to see that. DJ Moore, Rome Odunze, and Keenan Allen, and Caleb Williams would sure love that.
For sure. My number 4 guy is Brian Thomas Jr. at LSU. So 6'3", a big-time speed threat. Ran a 4.33 at the NFL Combine. This past season at LSU, he finished the year with 68 receptions, 1,177 receiving yards, and 17 receiving touchdowns. He's a very smooth route runner. I think he will be another guy who makes an immediate impact as a wide receiver 2 with a wide receiver 1 upside.
Yeah, no doubt about it. He's my number 4 also. He should be a top 10 lock in most drafts, but because those top 3 guys are so special, he'll probably be a top 15, maybe top 20. But an absolute beast. I think he's the best deep ball threat in this draft. He's built just like Randy Moss. He's got that elite release off the line of scrimmage. He's just a nightmare for cornerbacks, especially in one-on-one coverages. He had 17 touchdowns this last year. So, not only is he a good deep ball threat, but he's also a huge red zone threat, being 6'4", 205 pounds. Now, the main reason why I compared him to this player is because of his size and his deep ball ability, and I compared him to Randy Moss. Randy Moss was probably a 4.2 guy, but, being 6'4", 205, running a 4.33, I mean, I don't think that comparison's really that far off. So I love Brian Thomas Jr.
I have a quick funny story about Randy Moss, if I can share it with you.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's hear it.
Okay, so just real quick, then we'll move into number 5. So
Yeah.
my wife's family is from Marshall, Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
And so everyone knows that Trey Lance went to Marshall, Minnesota, drafted or went to NDSU, then to San Francisco 49ers, now for Dallas. So just a quick funny story. Uh, my father-in-law was telling me a story about a guy down in Arizona who they rent from when they go down there, and he was talking about how Trey Lance, because the guy is a big NDSU fan,
Mhm.
and so he's like, well, yeah, and he's saying how he's from Marshall, Minnesota, and then the guy was like, oh yeah, there's another like great NFL player that was from Marshall too, and he couldn't think of his name. And a few
Oh,
weeks later,
yeah.
he responds back. He says, Randy Moss, look him up.
Look them up. Oh, that's hilarious.
Uh,
Different Marshall, but yeah, I mean, they that's really funny.
I thought I just had to share that one real quick, so I thought you'd
Oh,
get a kick out of it.
dude, that's hilarious. Look them up. That's so funny.
So, well, moving on to my fifth player. This is where I think our rankings will probably start to be a little different.
Yeah,
So
I
I'm
think so
curious
too.
if you'll have,
Yep.
and we'll see how our rest of our top 10 here ranks out. So my number 5 guy, Xavier Worthy out of Texas,
Nice.
the fastest 40 ever in NFL Combine history with a 4.21, absolute burner. And don't just write him off as a deep ball threat because he's more than that. I think he is a pretty elite. He's a pretty elite playmaker and would be a solid wide receiver too.
Yep.
I don't know if I would call him a wide receiver one, but I think he can be a special talent. He's leaving Texas with 197 receptions, 2,755 receiving yards, and 26 touchdown catches in 3 years.
Yeah.
So he has had a tremendous college career there in Texas, and just a guy to keep out for or keep an eye on this draft.
Yeah, definitely. He's coming up here quickly on my list here, but my number 5 is A.D. Mitchell, another receiver from Texas. I mean, Quinn Ewers, man, he had some special receivers last season.
For sure.
But going back to Mitchell, 6'5", 205, ran a 4.34. Very violent route runner. He's got probably the best jab step, to create separation from DBs in this entire draft. His body
Mm-hmm.
control is crazy in contested catches, and he's 6'3", but he almost plays bigger than 6'3", which is kind of crazy. And my comparison for him is T. Higgins. I think he plays a lot like T. Higgins, and we'll see what happens here with T. Higgins. But in my opinion, T. Higgins, should be a number one receiver in this league. But because he's on the same team as Jamar Chase, he isn't that guy yet. But I think A.D. Mitchell has the potential to be that number one receiver at the next level.
Yeah, that's a really nice comp too, and he's actually my number 6 player. So
Nice, nice.
So yeah, he like you said, he ran a 4.34 40, which really impressed me. He transferred to Texas last year after being previously at Georgia. So last year he really broke out for for the Longhorns. He finished the year with 55 receptions, 845 receiving yards, and 11 touchdown catches. I'd like to see him become more consistent. I felt like when I was watching Texas games at times, he would disappear from the game.
Yep, one
So
takeover.
yeah,
Yep.
no, yep. So I do think he has a lot of great traits to make him an instant starter at the next level, though. So definitely a really nice player.
Yeah, no doubt. And my number 6 is actually Xavier Worthy. You talked about him with
Okay.
that 4.21, fastest 40 ever. I mean, that's so freaking fast.
Yep.
And um, with pads on, he's just as fast. So he's obviously a great deep ball receiver, but he's really good at like quick slants. And every time he gets the ball in his hands, he can take it for 6 with that speed that he has. Good punt and kick returner, so that's going to be a big play, huge factor with him contributing to a team at the next level. My only knock on him is he doesn't catch a lot of contested one-on-one balls down the field, but then again, he is
Mhm.
only 5'11", 170 pounds. So
Yeah.
but either way, that doesn't. I think he's a first round receiver all day long. And my NFL comparison for him was Jameson Williams, another speedster for the Lions. And I think towards the end of the year, the Lions started using him a little bit more. So I
Yep.
think Jameson Williams is going to have a big year next year for the Lions. And I think Xavier Worthy, no matter what team he goes to, he should have a huge impact as a rookie.
Yeah, he's definitely get him the ball in space and just let him go.
Yeah,
So
no
I
doubt.
like that a lot.
No doubt.
My number 7 guy, and man, he might be one of these next two guys actually might be my two favorite wide receivers in this class. And my number 7 is Lad McConkey out of Georgia. So
Nice.
man, just watching Georgia, McConkey always flashed to me. His route running's terrific. He's a smooth criminal with his route running, I like to say.
Yeah,
He's
love it.
very athletic. He ended up running a 4.3940 at the combine, which was a lot faster than I thought he was going to be.
Yep.
I think he'll be a long time wide receiver in the NFL. Even though he's rated 7 on my list, like I said, he I think he's going to be an absolute steal here for a team, whoever takes him.
Yep, and he's actually my number 7 too. That's pretty funny. He
Okay.
this is the guy that's probably helped his case the most out of receivers since the season ended. He
Mm-hmm.
dominated the Senior Bowl. He went to the combine, ran that 4.39. He's been shooting up team boards. My NFL comparison for him is Puka Nakua, a guy that absolutely
Yeah.
dominated last year. You could argue that he had the best rookie receiving wide receiver season from a rookie in NFL history. So that's what kind of player that Lad McConkey is. And I think he's going to be a first round pick and a guy that's going to
Okay.
contribute right away. I think he's an absolute steal and a beast at the next level.
Well, number 8. So actually, Zach, let's flip flop this. Let's have you go first.
All right, sounds good. My number 8 is Xavier Leggett from South Carolina. 6'3", 230 pounds. And if you're a DK Metcalf fan, then you should be a fan of Xavier Leggett because they're almost
Mm-hmm.
clones. 4'3", 940, physical freak. He's not the best route runner, but I mean, either was DK Metcalf coming out of college. DK kind of just uses his physicality on DBs. It kind of just
Yep.
overpowers them. And you get a guy like DK Metcalf one-on-one, he's just so hard to stop. And I think Xavier Leggett could be the same exact thing at the next level. My only knock, and the reason why Xavier Leggett is number 8 on my list is because he only has one
Mm-hmm.
good year in college, which is kind of concerning. He did have 70 catches last year, almost 1,300 yards and 7 touchdowns. But before that, he really didn't do anything. So only 1 year of good tape. But I think his potential is definitely DK Metcalf, and in my opinion, probably a second round, a day 2 pick, but probably a steal for whoever takes him.
Yeah, for sure. And he's on my list coming up here a little later, so we'll see where he's at. When I'm my number 8 player is Ricky Pearsall of Florida. So another one of those guys who I think is going to be a steal in this draft. I've talked about his route running in past episodes and his catch this past season, which may
Unbelievable.
be one of the craziest catches I've ever seen in college,
Yep.
especially when taking the hit like he did, and he like backwards handed that too.
Yep.
So I would absolutely love him on the Vikes. I know there's probably no way that that's going to happen as of right now since we have no day 2 picks.
Yeah.
But man, I just hope he doesn't end up with a team in NFC North like the Packers or the Lions or the Bears.
I know, and I could see it too. I think he'd be a great fit in that Packers offense. I really do.
I sure hope not, man, because it would be hard for me to not root for Ricky Pearsall. But if he's on Green Bay, that's definitely
Yeah.
definitely not going to be rooting for him
Yeah.
either. So
Exactly. And that's the thing. I think he's going to be a fantastic football player, but that just goes to show how deep this wide receiver class is because he's not on my top 10, but a guy that probably should
okay,
be on there. But I mean, you're going to get a guy like him day 2, and he's going to contribute right away as a rookie. It just goes to show how deep this class is. But
yeah, for sure.
my number 9 is Keon Coleman from Florida State, 6'4", 215. I think he's going to be a day 2 pick. He ran a 4.61 40 at the combine. In my opinion, he
Yep.
plays a lot faster than that, so I don't think that should scare teams away too much. He's a big body wide receiver. He reminds me a lot of Plexico Burris. I don't know if a lot of people, with those Giants teams winning the Super Bowl and stuff. Just a
Yeah.
big body receiver. Plexico was a little bit bigger than him. Plexico was like almost 240 pounds, I think, 6'5". So big guy, but
Hmm.
two receivers that really know how to use their frame well. Keenan Coleman has 18 touchdowns the last 2 years. So an awesome red zone threat. And yeah, I just think that's another guy that's going to come in day 1. And, I think as a rookie, he's going to catch close to 10 touchdowns. So absolute
Okay.
beast.
Yeah, and he's actually my number 9 guy too. So some
Nice.
notes I have on him is, he's a big physical wide receiver, like you said, who will be a great red zone threat. I was disappointed by his 40 time a little bit, but like you said too, he did look very smoothly, or he did run smoothly in the gauntlet.
Yep.
I think he was one of the most or more smoother guys during that and actually ran it pretty quickly. But yeah, with how deep this wide receiver class, he's another one of those guys who could be a top dog in this class when it's all said and done. So
Yeah.
I like Keenan Coleman a lot. I like his measurables, and one thing I think he transferred from Michigan State to FSU last year,
Mhm.
and I want to say he played basketball at Michigan State for a little bit too. So he's got that basketball background in him, and yeah, look out for him because he could be a steal in this draft.
Yeah, and I didn't know that he played basketball, but I could definitely see it. I mean, even like looking at him catching balls in the red zone, it almost looks like he's going up and getting a rebound. So, a guy
Mhm.
that's really, really good on those 50-50 balls. So I could definitely see that basketball background.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he played basketball. I'm not 100% on that, but I
Yeah.
want to say he did play a little basketball up at Michigan State.
Yeah. Like I said, I could definitely, definitely see it. But moving on to my number 10, and this guy, um, I love this player. The fact that he's number 10 on this list is absolutely ridiculous. I think that I think that he's probably going to be a first round pick. I think this name's going to surprise a lot of people when he gets taken, and that's wide receiver Troy Franklin out of Oregon. 6'3",
Hmm.
180 pounds, a 4.35. He can play inside the slot and he can play outside, and he makes some of the most challenging catches look just effortless. He's
Yeah.
he's just such a freak receiver. He in that Oregon offense, he had 81 catches, almost 1,400 yards, and 14 touchdowns last year. And to be honest, I
Hmm.
think he was kind of handcuffed in that offense because that offense is, has a bunch of quick hitters and stuff. And
Yep.
I really think like if they would have thrown more deep balls to him, because I think that's where he's going to excel at the next levels on those deep balls. I mean, his stats
Yeah.
could have been even better. And he, like I said, he had 81 catches and 1,400 yards and 14 touchdowns. And I thought he was handcuffed. So I would not be surprised at all if he's a late first round pick. He reminds me of a taller Deshaun Jackson. They both ran 4.35s, and just a fluid player that can take screens and deep passes and anything for six at any given moment. So a player that I love, Troy Franklin.
Yeah, he's definitely going to be a really good talent. He did not make my top 10. I had him at number 11.
Sure, sure. Yep.
But yeah, so he just missed my top 10. But going back to Keenan Coleman real quick, yeah, he played 1 year of college basketball. He didn't play it a lot though. He played like 6 games and an average of 1.7 minutes. So just kind of a bench guy.
Okay, still,
But
yeah.
definitely that has that background for college or basketball there. So
Yeah, that's awesome.
moving on to my number 10 guy. So my number 10 guy, you touched on him earlier, and that's Xavier Leggett out of South Carolina. So I said he's a very raw player who needs further development. I think with the right coach, he could really turn into something at the next level.
Yep.
And as you said, he had by far his most productive season this past year. He finished the year with 71 catches, 1,255 receiving yards, and 7 touchdowns. And then, he really helped. I'm thinking, the next Raiders quarterback here, and that's Spencer Rattler. Did him a service
Oh,
this past season too. So
dude, come on.
uh,
Come on.
I'll joke. All joking aside, though, his voice sounded like Bubba Gump from
Oh,
Forrest
dude.
Gump
Yes, yes.
is awesome.
Dude, it's
If you
hilarious.
haven't heard him talk, look it up because you'll not be disappointed. So
Yeah, you would think that he was kind of joking with his voice, but that's actually how he talks, and it is hilarious. So definitely YouTube that as soon as you're done listening to this podcast because it's funny.
no doubt. So yeah, just wrapping up our top 10. So my number 1 was Marvin Harrison Jr. Number 2, Malik Neighbors. Number 3, Rome Odunze. Number 4, Brian Thomas Jr. Number 5, Xavier Worthy. Number 6, A.D. Mitchell. Number 7, Lad McConkey. Number 8, Ricky Pearsall. Number 9, Keon Coleman. And number 10, Xavier Leggett.
Nice. In my top 10 were number 1, Marvin Harrison Jr., number 2, Malik Neighbors, number 3, Roma Dunze, number 4, Brian Thomas Jr., number 5, A.D. Mitchell, number 6, Xavier Worthy, number 7, Lad McConkey, number 8, Xavier Leggett, number 9, Kean Coleman, and number 10, Troy Franklin.
Very nice, man. I'm really excited to see where all these guys end up.
Yeah, me too. Like we said earlier, this is the best wide receiver class that I've ever seen. I think you're going to get day one starters, day three, which is pretty rare, especially in today's NFL. So definitely excited to see where all these guys go.
For sure. And just one more thing before we wrap up. So earlier on, we talked a little bit about the Vikings, and one move I just kind of forgot about was KJ Osborne, how he signed a 1-year deal with the New England Patriots for $4 million that can be worth up to $6 million.
Yeah, and I think that's a good fit for him because He's probably going to be their wide receiver one, which is kind of crazy. I thought he kind of disappointed as, wide receiver three and wide receiver two when Jefferson got hurt. So a guy, he's only 26. So, maybe
Yeah.
they get a guy like Drake May or, Jacoby Brissett can really kind of force feed him the ball and maybe he can resurrect his career a little bit. I think he only had 500 yards last year. But nonetheless, I think that was a good move for the Patriots.
Yeah, for sure. Hold on, Zach. Stop the pod.
Oh, we got breaking news?
The Las Vegas Raiders have
No way.
done absolutely nothing.
Oh, dude. Oh my God. You had to be excited now because I've been hearing a lot of rumors that we're gonna make a trade here. And I was like, dude, do we have something? Oh man,
Yeah.
dude, I'm not gonna lie, you got me pretty good there. uh,
Uh,
yeah, unbelievable,
well,
dude.
yeah. So just for I hope maybe someday, we'll be shooting an episode and something will break like that. That'll be pretty
Dude, I
cool.
was
So
hoping, man, that would have been awesome to break some news on here.
yeah, definitely. Well, yeah, so if you got to this point, thank you for listening, and we'll continue on ranking these prospects here. We'll have to touch on the defensive side of the ball now. That kind of wraps up all our offensive guys for this draft, and the next podcast we'll start moving into the defensive side.
Yeah, sounds good. I really like this defensive class too, so it'll be fun to kind of break these guys down and give our listeners our rankings on those guys. But until then, hit those bell icons, get notified when new episodes drop. Just win, baby.
Straight cash, homie. Thank you for listening to our episode. Be sure to give us a follow on Instagram and X at Naptime Sports Talk Podcast for content related to the pod. Thank you for the support.